Welcome back to Pragati Vichar Literature Festival 2023 attendees. Let's dive in and make the most of our times together. The age old question of whether human existence is for serving or living will be explored in our next session, which is on the topic of human existence for serving or living. I would request the panelists to please be on the stage. Author Deepak Sani, author Archana Mirajkar, author Nitu, in conversation with Jyotsna Thakran, media representative Frontlist.
Hi everyone, welcome ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys are enjoying the event and it's good to see such wonderful faces, especially after lunch. So today we'll be talking about human existence, society, self-realization and life purpose and so on and so forth. So introducing our next session is, on the topic is human existence for serving or living? So please allow me to introduce our distinguished panelists for for this session. So first we have Deepak Saini. Deepak Saini is a heartfulness meditation practitioner and trainer with over 2 decades of spiritual training under his guru. He is an IIT Bombay alumnus and has held several leadership positions in top corporates. And his book, his debut book, Urban Buddha, it's a philosophical fiction book that we'll be talking today. Urban Buddha. It's a story of man looking for answer, half aware of the mystical presence and guidance in his life. And this book can kindle your interest and inspire you to realize your higher self. Thank you so much, Deepak sir, for joining us today. And next co-panelist, we have Archana Mirajkar. Archana Mirajkar is an Indian author and communication specialist who writes in English and Marathi. She works at the High Commission of India in New Delhi. She's also host of YouTube series focused on literature. Her book, All the Way Home. We will be discussing her book, All the Way Home, today. And it's a science fiction book which is for the young adults. The story isn't set in the future when humans have left the Earth and inhabited other planets. And the story's protagonist, Arushi, and her journey of going back to Earth to explore the planet. So this book also talks about human philosophy and human relationship, how we establish our human relationship. Thank you so much, Archana ma'am, joining us today. So last but not the least, we have Nitu. Being an experienced officer of the 1991 batch of CRPF, Nitu has worked in tough areas and handled critical assignments. Recipient of Police Medal for Meritorious Service, Antrik Suraksha Padak and Kathin Seva Padak. She has worked closely with women in the forces. She is an author of the books Resurrection, A Women Reborn, Half-Life to Greater Heights, Adhure Spandan. So most of her work, it solely talks about the women, the representation of women in the society, and she will be discussing the condition of women in the armed forces. So welcome, ma'am. I'll welcome you, all of you. What is human existence? Human's existence, it's all about that how we differ human species from others, right? So when we talk about living a life, it means defining the life purpose. But life purpose is not some kind of definite. It is something that we can feel the impact. No one can define what is life purpose. And serving humanity, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, render services. Render services means Sanatan Dharma, right? So there is no such religion. So there is only render servicing and gratitude. So human existence is something that we are trying to decipher. It's a mystery that we cannot, we need to dig deeper to, know the actual meaning of human existence. So let's just start with the Q&A round. So my first question to Deepak sir, that your book, Urban Buddha, it's talk about human existence. It's talk about the quest of life purpose. So how do you define the life purpose according to you? Can you define it? What is life purpose according to you?
So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. The way I think the only purpose of life is to evolve, is to raise your consciousness. Now, it may sound very esoteric, but the whole idea is that can we really rise above our normal level of awareness. As James Allen puts it, that there are two options we have. One is to be the man who's being tossed in the sea, or to be a man who's standing on the shore, firmly rooted on the rock. Now, it may sound a little weird that how can you be both? But the reality is that we are both. What matters is what lens we put in. And that lens is the lens of consciousness. We can be that man who is being tossed in the sea by the events of life, or we can be the unperturbed Atman or the real self standing ashore and observing everything, as Lord Krishna puts it, with a Sakshi Bhava. This journey from that to this, from smaller self to the higher self, is the only purpose of life. So that's how I would define it.
So, is human existence for serving or living? Can we have both, or do we need to choose one?
I would say neither. Human life is not about living, or let me translate that into surviving. And it's also not about serving. These are but smaller part of a bigger whole. These are just the manifestation of a bigger purpose. You know, once a man went to a great sage, and this guy was a rich guy, into philanthropy, all those things. And he asked him a question that, I don't need spirituality, do I? I'm already doing so good, so much for the, my society, my country. I'm donating, I'm building, mandirs and stuff like that. Why do I need spirituality? To this, the master replied that what you are doing is just being human. It's like the water which is on a higher point, it just flows down to a lower point because there's more potential energy here and there's a lower potential energy here. That's all about it. There's nothing very, interesting you're doing. That is very natural. If you don't do this, you'll stagnate. So even, just to finish my point, he was giving, he was serving, and he was thinking that that's the purpose. No. Surviving is not a function, the complete function. Even giving is not a function. The only thing is to change your vantage point and to become something which is higher than your normal self. When you do that, both these things gets automatically established. You don't get karta bhav at all. You are not doing that. You are just observing that. And in that observation is your realization. Did I confuse you enough?
Thank you so much. In a nutshell, I would say that become a higher self, become a better version of yourself.
That's exactly what it is. And that's a lot of work. First thing is to understand that you are at point A, you need to go to point B. That's the first realization. Once that realization sets in, then comes an attempt. And that is where the yatra starts.
So you just mentioned realization. So I would like to know what is the difference between God realization and self-realization, since you mentioned in your book.
Very interesting. They're essentially the same thing. As Upanishad would say, that beneath this appearance world, everything underneath, beneath this conscious world, everything is not similar but same. So you and me and everybody who is sitting here, at the core, is exact same thing. Like gold, every atom is same. You can make it into different ornaments, but the real material is gold. So that gold, that ore, and the tiny particle, what we are, that is God, that's what we are. But the material, the composition, everything else is not similar, but same.
I'm absolutely impressed. So yeah, moving ahead. Miss Nitu, that your book, you have written so many books. One is poetry, and most of that, since you are one of the first lady armed forces, you are from armed forces. So you've written poetry on women, And you have mentioned your war conflict areas in Punjab and Kashmir. So could you please share more about your books, like what exactly your writing style, what exactly do you write?
So, first of all, it's a huge pleasure to be here and to be able to talk about all, which is very, very different from what was being talked about by Deepak, where he talks about consciousness and he talks about how do you achieve that purpose in life. I talk about conflict, and I talk about conflict and what conflict does to people. How do people react to a conflict situation? Because this is not something that they are a part of the whole thing. And yet, how does it affect them on a day-to-day basis? How does it affect the person who's looking at conflict from outside? How does it affect a person who is totally not connected with it, and yet somehow it just turns up at their doorstep? Does this conflict affect people who are trying to bring a normalcy to the situation? Does it affect me as a person who's trying to do something about it? And how does it affect my family back home? Because while it could be a choice for me, while it could be a passion for me, every time that I'm in a conflict situation, how does my family get affected? And what is the huge price that that family pays for it? This is just an example, but my daughter was able to complete her class 12 with a good 19 schools because I kept taking her across the country from one conflict situation to the other conflict situation. How does she define normalcy? Does she look at normalcy as the normalcy that we see here, or does that become her new normal? And then how does it affect the person on the other side? How does he continue to take a conflict situation that goes on and on and on? How do people then define their coming of age? How do they define looking for, as he said, growth? And what is it that becomes their personality to then become the new person that they are? That's what I talk about.
Thank you. If I ask what is life purpose according to you, and according to you, what is human existence? Because Deepak Saini's answer is more of spiritual, but you have life experiences. So yeah, please.
Yeah, so to me, the basic question is whether it is serving or whether it is living. He said it is neither of the two. I say it is both of them. I look at it from a soldier's viewpoint. As Chesterton would say, that a soldier fights not because he hates the person in front of him. A soldier fights because he loves the person behind him. That is the kind of passion that comes from there. Do I then call it that I'm serving the country, or do I call it as living for myself? Do I call it my reason for existence? And do I really, really define it as the person that I would become? And how does the person on the other side define itself? A loss is a loss, whether it is on this side of the border or it is on that side of the border. How do people then define this in themselves and within themselves? Do people look at it the same way? In one of my books, which is called Half-Life, there is a small paragraph that I would read from this book, which talks about how people would define it. This talks about the partition of the country and what the partition did, and how did the Radcliffe line, that's the line that divides India and Pakistan, it was done by a person called Cyril Radcliffe. So what was going on in Radcliffe's mind? Did he know what those lines would do? Did he ponder the effect that they would have, and did he think about the smudges? Did he wake up in night screaming in agony as man turned on man as the lines he drew? Did he imagine the gory depths that humanity sank to as they looked on the ground beneath them to look for the lines that he had drawn? Lines that would mark borders where none existed before. Lines that would change destiny, and lines that would separate families forever. Did he imagine the thousands of years of syncretic culture that would unravel at that stroke? Did he stop to ponder his black lines and what they would do? Did he look at the red borders that they would make as blood gushed out of ripped hearts? My grandma would often wonder what kind of death Mr. Radcliffe had faced, and we never had any answers. In fact, all through her life, she'd blessed Radcliffe. We never understood why would she do so. And then she explained she had to wish him well because millions were cursing every day. That is my culture, and that is my country that could still find within themselves the ability to be able to bless the person who had brought so much of damage to this country. That, to me, is living, surviving, and humanity.
Thank you so much, Nitu ma'am. So next, Archana Mirajkar. So your book, The All the Way Home, it's a philosophical fiction. It's a science fiction. I'm really sorry. So your book, it's a story protagonist Arushi that you mentioned, that they're totally inhabited in a different planet. So seek new existence. They establish a new society. So through your book, how did you connect the philosophy? You mentioned that it is also talks about human relationship and philosophy. So please share what is exactly your book about and how does it connect with the concept of philosophy.
So thank you, Jyotsna, and thank you, the organizers, for having me here. You did not make a mistake. It is a science fiction. The genre is a science fiction, but it does end on a philosophical note. Here again, the book combines something what Nitu is saying, she has experienced all her life, conflict, and what Deepak is advocating, spirituality. So the book talks about a situation where humanity has been at war. We call it final wars. The war was so big and so all-encompassing that the humanity managed to destroy Earth, make it totally unfit for living. And so whoever were the survivors had to escape this planet. There were already colonies for scientific purposes on other worlds, and they had to escape to those worlds. And through trial and error, they kept looking for a planet and finally found a planet that is very suitable for human life, and they inhabited it. And because of their advanced technology, they turned it into something that was so good for human life that they call it Swarg, which means heaven, because it is so good. And here, what I say is that having experienced that level of conflict, having experienced near extinction, the human species has evolved into an enlightened race, where they are no longer at war with each other. They are no longer, they have kind of eliminated all kinds of strife from their life because they are now photosynthetic. They don't need to fight for food. They have grown wings through biological engineering, so they have escaped their locality. And they are always engaged in pursuits that help them evolve into higher beings. They are into creative arts and crafts and scientific research and literature. So, this is an idealistic viewpoint of what humanity can be if they are able to overcome their negative tendencies, their basic instincts, their animal instincts. And that is what I feel humanity is destined for, as Deepak said, and as our philosophy, and perhaps all religions all over the world, the basic tenets says that human beings are meant for much more than just, survival. And that's what I think is, what is achievable and what we should, as a species, as a race, strive for.
So Deepak Saini has given his answer in a more spiritual manner, and Nitu ma'am suggested a more of life experience. But since you are more of storyteller, you weave story, and you just written just a very beautiful science fiction book. So according to you, what is human existence?
So I don't see this dichotomy between, whether it is for serving or living. I don't think there is any difference between the two, because I think what is good for an individual is ultimately good for the society, and what is good for the society is ultimately good for the individual. And you need to differentiate between joy and pleasure. Pleasure is instantaneous and lasts for a short while. You get pleasure out of mostly your senses. You like to eat good, you like to wear good, you like to be entertained. But those kind of pleasures, those kind of satisfactions, if you think, are, are not long lasting. They're short lived. And from then you need to keep jumping from one pleasure to another pleasure. You keep thinking, oh, if I get just that job, I'm going to be happy for the rest of my life. If I get that one promotion, I'm going to be happy for life. If I just pass that examination, if I get admission into that particular course, that particular university, I'm going to be happy for life. But that never happens. You achieve that goal and then you want something more. 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, you have forgotten your sorrows or your joy of achieving or not achieving something. You want something else in life. You want another goal. You want another goal. And this is endless until the life ends. And you keep on going, and then there's no real satisfaction inside. And then you get into mental health issues. You try to figure out what's the purpose of life. You are unhappy inside. But if you are engaged in pursuits that give you real pleasure, helping others, connecting with your community, pleasures that are long-lasting, that give you inherent satisfaction, and that you are engaged in activities that are good for the entire community, for the humanity, that is long-lasting pleasure. And that is what our philosophy talks about. Not the superficial religion, but what philosophy, what anchors you in life. So I don't see this dichotomy. It's also the serving. It's also you when you serve others, or when you do or engaged in activities that are good for a larger community, you get satisfaction of living yourself. And so I think that those two go hand in hand.
Thank you so much, Archana. Since you mentioned happiness, pleasures, or pursuits of having materialistic things, so me as an adult or people in the audience, most of the people are want materialistic things, want a higher position in their life. Do you really think getting materialistic things and pursuing higher self or achieving a higher position, it is the ultimate goal of our life purpose?
It is important. Achieving things, being successful in your life, doing things that you love, what you aspire for are important. But I don't see that's the end goal in life. They should be looked at in a perspective. You should be a complete human being. Yes, your personal achievements, your personal happiness, the happiness of your family is important. Your relationships are important. But that's part of the whole. You are not just that. Nobody should judge another person on the basis of their achievements, on the basis of their external personality, on the basis of their materialistic positions. You should look at an individual in a higher manner, in a holistic manner. And I think both are important. Achievements and enjoyment of your personal goals is also important, because God has given, or nature has given you gifts that you are utilizing and giving you a sense of accomplishment. But beyond that, you also need to look inside, because if you are always looking outside, then external pleasures are not going to give you permanent satisfaction. You need to introspect, you need to look inside. And our philosophy, our Upanishads, our Vedas tell us that our original nature is pure, pristine joy. And as Deepak said earlier, you need to look inside and find that joy. It's not always easy. As Nitu has said, that there are situations, there's conflict, that it's not always easy to sit back and then look inside. But once you start doing that, and when that journey begins, I think you no longer think between the difference between whether I'm doing it for myself, whether I'm only living for myself, or do I need to deny my pleasures and go, because they then go, both the streams then start merging together and you become that holistic person.
Thank you so much. So Deepak sir, would you like to add something to it?
Absolutely. I think, thank you for asking. Just to add, if we are able to say, I'm happy because, it is a surest sign to understand that you're not happy. Because if you really think that you are happy, like you got a promotion or something, that is a shelf life. And that is not happiness, that could be satisfaction. Happiness is an inner state of being. It is not a state or an act of achieving. Achieving and being are two different things. That's one. Second point is, the whole point is, it is not a question of either and or, this and that. It is basically both. It's like a bird which needs two wings to fly. You cannot fly on one wing. If I say, okay, I'm going to just relinquish everything and just be by myself, well, then this world is not my place. At the same time, if I get too much engaged, I lose my real purpose, my evolution. And then I'll be the man who will be tossed, not the man who is standing on the shore. So it is that balance, that's Sthito Pragya Sthiti, where you are centered. You are in the eye of the hurricane, which is absolutely still, and the world is going crazy around you. In a way, that is the whole idea about the book Urban Buddha. Buddhas, I was, I think, speaking with you or someone. Buddhas are not to be sought in any vanas these days. These Buddhas are to be sought at traffic signals and conference rooms here. Because that's the only way this society can sustain. It is the merging of the two worlds. Thank you.
Yes, so adding to that, basically, he's talking about an equilibrium that you need to achieve. It's also talking about the fact that you need to be in the world, with the world, and without the world. So, and how do you look at it from within yourself? In this world, a world of a competitiveness, in this world where a lot of things happen to you which you have not thought of or you have not factored them in. Once you've not factored them in and yet something happens, how do you look at it? How do you define joy? And how do you define this inner pleasure within yourself that continues to be, as she has put it? And as you said, since I write in Hindi, I'm taking this opportunity to read this out, and maybe that's what, this is again a book that Mittalji very confidently published for me, Rang. पहली बार रंगों का डिब्बा पाकर कितनी खुश थी वह, रंग देगी पूरी दुनिया को अपने रंगों में, हरा पीला नीला लाल हर रंग, घर की हर दीवार पर रंगा था तन्मयता से. माँ से पता चला रंग यहाँ वहाँ नहीं कर सकते, और फिर रंग सिमट गए कागज़ों के दायरे में. स्कूल की टीचर से पता चला कि रंग केवल लकीरों के भीतर कर सकते हैं, उनके भी उसूल होते हैं. आकाश केवल नीला हो सकता है, घास हरी ही बनानी होगी, ऐसा टीचर ने बताया. रंग सिमट गए नियम, कायदे, कानून के बीच. और फिर कई साल बाद तुम मिले, रंग सजीव हो गए उठे, आकाश में लालिमा धुली, रंग झूम उठे, वह रंगों से सरोबार हो गई. अनायास एक घड़ी में तुम चले गए, रंग रूठ गए, छोड़ गए मटमैले पीले कागज. लेकिन अब उसने रंगों का पिटारा खोला है, हरे गुलाबी नीले जामुनी रंग, जिनके लिए ना कागज चाहिए ना कुची. वह रंग देगी अपना आकाश उंगलियों हथेलियों से और रच लेगी अपना खुद का अनोखा सतरंगी क्षितिज. So I think that is what life is about. That is how life evolves, and that is how you find the strength within yourself. Everything, this entire world as it is, as it exists, is within yourself, within your entire soul. All that you need to do is to look for this strength within yourself, and then the world is again yours.
Thank you so much, Nitu ma'am. So we discussed happiness, pleasure, but we haven't discussed suffering and pain yet. And it is very important. It's a vital component of anyone's life. So how do suffering and pain shape human life, and how can we use suffering and pain in a way to embrace ourselves? Life is not about happiness, but it's also suffering and pain. So how can it, shape our minds and, help us to become a better version of ourselves? So I would like to start with Archana.
You're right, Josna. Suffering and pain is very much a part of life. And as we grow up, at some point, we realize that we come out of our complacency. But again, I would say that just as we should not be over ecstatic with our achievements and our joy, we should not be over depressed or lose our equilibrium when faced with life's adversities. Nothing probably prepares us for the kind of tragedies in life, the disappointments we face, or the grief and suffering that comes our way, sometimes totally unannounced. We are not prepared for it. But then those who survive them and pull their selves up and don't disintegrate in the face of those hardships, emerge out of them as better, wiser, and more tough people. And again, as I say, that there should not be, difference between serving and living. Living also is not always about joy. Living is also about enduring pain, enduring grief, and fighting adversity. And then, if you are anchored within yourself, if you have begun that journey towards your inner core, I think you find strength within yourself to withstand those situations, to learn from them, emerge out of them, and then again help others and the bigger community to face similar situations. Anybody who else might be in the similar circumstances, you gain that strength. And when you are facing them, perhaps you are also helped by others who have gone through it and learned how to overcome them.
Thank you, Archana ma'am. So Neetu ma'am, when I started that you discussed about your book, that you discussed the war conflicted area and how it affects women and their family. And I feel like suffering and pain, it is something that is very close to your heart because you have seen so many incidents in front of your eyes. So what's your take on this?
See, my take is that life is anyways a packet. It's not just the joys, it's not just, as you said, it is going in a smooth space. It never does. At all points in time, there will be an upheaval. And as they would very famously say, that is what heartbeats are all about, and that is what an ECG machine would be, that it has an ups and downs, and that is why it is life. Where she says that let's not be very, very happy about something, and let's not be very sorrowful about something, that is, as you just said, it's going to take a whole lot of effort to be able to achieve that. Not an easy job, never is an easy job. However, when you are faced with grief, when you're faced with a situation, that is where your entire value system will come into core. Your entire being, the core person that you are, and what is it, the muscles and the strength is not in your hands. It's something which is in your head. It is something which is within your heart. Despite all the conflict, if you can hold on to your humanity, despite everything, if you can hold on to your compassion, the world together, all of us together sitting here across the country, across the globe, saw the COVID crisis, which none of us had anticipated. In none of our dreams we had thought that this could also happen. All of us have taken an economic beating. All of us have had to recalibrate our own selves. We've also had to look at ourselves and find out where is our strength. The strength within the families, the strength that we get from our spouses and children, the strength that we draw from each other. People who were totally unknown to us have helped us, and people who are very close to us have not even looked back at us. We have all of us seen families who have gone for the last funerals also without their loved ones being with them. We have all seen people where there were unknown people who have cremated our own people. We have all seen this. And yet, my only question to the entire this thing is, have we really learned something from it? Or is it again business as usual? That is the only thing. If we are able to take a huge thinking from it, if we are able to root ourselves to compassion and humanity, that is what serving and living will all together ever be.
Thank you so much. So moving ahead, Deepak Saini, I'm expecting a very different answer from you. So please.
Sorry to disappoint you. first thing, in my opinion, is to understand pain and suffering is an quintessential part of our existence. If the life effort is all about avoiding pain and suffering, it is doomed. It's not possible. Second important question, which I often reflect upon, is like, can really anybody make me suffer? Can anyone give me pain? My analysis is it's not possible. Theoretically speaking, if you go by Gita, you can only reap what you have sown. Well, there could be contradictions there, but let's assume that for a minute. If I have not done anything, if I have not written it for myself in one way or the other, is it really possible for anyone to give me anything? It's simply not possible. What people, events do to us is just deliver what we have already prescribed for ourselves. It's like an Amazon courier guy who comes and delivers. Dude, I have ordered it. He's just a delivery guy. And we say, you know what, such and such thing has happened in my life, my job, my life partner, life events. What are we talking here? The first thing, or let's say the second thing, if we understand that there is going to be pain and we accept it, 90% of the problem is solved. There's a book by Dr. Viktor Frankl. Some of you must have gone through it, Man in Search of Meaning, where he talks about an event where one guy, old person, he's suffering because his life partner has passed away. And he's like really in a very, very bad state. And Dr. Viktor Frankl tells him that, what if you were gone and your wife was here? And he says, that would be terrible. That would be absolutely, absolutely terrible. Then he said that this is your purpose of survival. You are enduring this pain. There is a reason for it. There is a purpose for it. So first level is understanding. Second level is contemplation. And third level is get your purpose. There cannot be anything in life which is devoid of purpose. As one great man once said, that the only purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. So I think it needs a lot of therav, and therefore the spiritual backing is required to give you that, calmness, to see things as they are, not as they're appearing on the surface. Not to be tossed, but to stand on the ground. Long answer, but I hope.
Thank you so much. So we are running short on time, but still, one question. What is the relationship between science and spirituality? And does it connect, really? So,
Should I go first?
Yeah, sure.
Anything which I have not experienced is not science. It is not even spirituality. It is just superstition. Anything which you have heard or which you are asked to believe is superstition. It's neither science nor spirituality. Anything and everything which I have experienced and is mine is science and also spirituality. So the question is not science or spirituality. I think the question is science of spirituality. There is a definite science, there is a definite method, there is a definite process, there is a definite objective, there is a definite outcome. We are the laboratory, we are the scientist, as my guru says, and we are the product. It is purely, purely science. Yes, this is not the science of the physical world. This is a science which is a little different. Nevertheless, it has its method, it has its mechanisms, it has its processes, and it has its results.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask to Archana ma'am that Western science fiction, Indian science fiction, these two terms are, very different from each other. And science fiction has really changed the spectrum of Indian literature. So, just what would you like to say in this context that if we compare the science fiction in Western world and Indian world, which is more better? Because since you're an Indian writer, so you know better. Yeah.
I wouldn't compare them as whether they are better or lesser. Each has its own characteristics. In India, science fiction is a niche genre of literature. It's not very widely produced, written, or even consumed. If you go to any library and if you see search for a science fiction section, it will have much less amount of books than, say, romance or other stories or social literature based on social issues. However, I would point out a few characteristics of Indian science fiction versus the science fiction that is mostly produced in Western world. There you see it's based more on conflict. You see galactic wars. You see, kind of science fiction of the Star Wars or the kind of science fiction you are seeing in Hollywood films. It's more about, interstellar travel. It's more about controlling or wars between different species. Those kind of themes are prevalent. Of course, you cannot generalize everything. There are exceptions. But in India, there have been a few trends. Initially, when science fiction started early in the 60s and 80s, our prominent scientists like Jayant Narikar started writing science fiction. There were writers in West Bengal who started writing science fiction in India. In those days, India's experience of being a colony was very predominant, and there were themes that were more on the lines of speculative fiction. So what if at all everything changed and they tackled those issues of colonialism, of India's suppression, and they dreamed of worlds where India was dominant, India was out of this foreign rule. Also, a large number of themes have tackled with gender disparity, women's suppression. One of the earliest science fiction was Begum Rokea's Sultana's Dream, which talks about a feminine world which is ruled by women. Women are everywhere in the public sphere, and they have confined men to the homes because men cause all trouble and they are not mature enough to engage socially. There are many other, even today's writers like Manjula Padmanabhan write extensively on gender issues through science fiction. Also, the diversity that we see in India, the Indian cities, they also feature a lot in Indian science fiction. And another theme which is also very prevalent is, kind of Orwellian states or very constrained societies. Samit Basu and many other modern science fiction writers are writing about these extremely controlled societies where there are walls separating people, segregation of society, very tight rules, what people can do, what people cannot do. So these are the political themes that Indian science fiction is also tackling a lot. There's a recent compilation of South Indian science fiction, which also has a lot of Indian writers writing among it. So the story, the themes or the issues which are very relevant to India. Also, there is a lot of, I would say, familial dramas, relationship issues which figure under Indian science fiction, more so as compared to the Western science fiction, I would say.
Thank you so much. You have explained in such a detailed manner. So thank you so much, Deepak Saini, Nitu, and Archana Mirajkar for joining us today and share your enlightening thoughts with the audience. I love the session, the human existence and life purpose. It's a much indeed enlightening session. Thank you so much. So all the 3 author books are available at the registration desk. So anyone who would like to read, please collect it and take it, and it's free of cost. Please. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
So I think everybody would be really interested towards that. And thank you so much. I would really like to thank the panel for such an insightful session. I would request for you, the panel, to stay for a little while for the felicitation ceremony. Now I would like to request Ashok Gupta, General Secretary, the Federation of Indian Publisher, President of Indian Reprographic Rights Organization, Managing Director, Unicorn Books, to please come on the stage and facilitate the honorable panel.